I've already mentioned you. He is an electrical engineer from Techno India, Kolkata, and an MBA in finance from NMIMS, Mumbai. He has over 7 to 8 years of experience ranging from sales, operations, analytics, and also management consulting. He has also got an extensive experience in insurance, retail, pharma, and BFSI sectors. He has been pivotal in converting as well as servicing a large number of clients for Atticus advisors in both management consulting and service operations. Today's webinar will be taken by him. We thank you, Partho sir, on behalf of Atticus for giving us this time for today's session. We have all our participants over here. So I hope more of them will be joining. And so we can start the session. It's all over to you.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you for your kind words. All right, so I was facing a little bit of an issue with my internet.
Sir, I can't hear you. I think, can you just check?
Can you hear me now?
No.
How do you hear this then? Hold on.
No, sir.
Can you hear me now? No?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
All right, great. So as is obvious in this case also, I was facing some network issues and network connectivity. If you guys are okay, then what I'll do is I'll continue in the same flow. And if you face any difficulty in listening or hearing to me, you can just scroll up and you'll find the chat window there, and I'll keep checking it every once in a while. That way we don't have to stop the entire conversation. All right. All you have to do is scroll up and type something in the chat so that all of us can see. If you have any questions, you can post it there. If you are facing issues with Zoom altogether, then that's something you can ask on your phone. So you just have to enter a question right there so that anybody who's sitting in the WhatsApp group can look and reply. The way I have structured this for you guys right now is we're going to start with a 20-minute introduction about one of the sessions in marketing. It's called B2b Marketing. I'll give a brief intro about what is B2b marketing, and then we'll speak about sales and pipeline management. Following that, we'll take a short break, about a 1-minute break, where we'll talk about other stuff related to the project and the program in front of you. After that, we are going to talk about finance. The finance session starts after that. In the finance session, we're going to be covering activity-based costing. One short session to get you the understanding of the concept of what is activity-based costing and where is it. All right, so let's get cracking. What you have in front of you is the same brochure that you must have received from Shunipa or one of our other teammates. I would quickly come down to, I'll be referring to this brochure quite often to show you which part of our program relates to this. We get started with the course. All right, so we'll start with B2B marketing. Just one thing before we begin. There are a few Amazon moments that we're going to be finding during this 1 hour. If any one of you can answer a question, and when I'm flashing this on the screen, all you have to do is reply on the WhatsApp group or on the chat. The first person to reply with the answer will get an Amazon voucher of ₹500. I'll give you a little bit of time, so I'll ask you a question. I'll wait for a few seconds. I'll flash this in front of your screen, and if you can answer that, you win a voucher. Great. So coming to B2B marketing. By the way, before I start, I'm guessing most of the profile in front of me, you students are not in-depth marketeers and you don't have a massive amount of experience in marketing, because then the conversation will start at a certain different level. We're going to start at a more fundamental level to make sure that you understand the jargon or the words that are being thrown around. Right? Before we talk about B2B marketing, first let's understand what does B2B mean. For those who are unfamiliar with the phrase or the term B2B, there are two broad ways in which any entity is working. That's B2B and B2C. In B2B marketing, you are talking about business to business, where you're connecting with the business end of your company is connecting with the business end of another company. That is called B2B or business to business. The other business is called B2C, which is business to consumer. Sorry, just chat. Right. Thank you, Shubham, for that. You're right. B2B is business to business and B2C is business to consumer or business to customer. But there are certain differences in which B2B works. Let me just throw up a mock Excel. if anyone if you have difficulty in reading, then let me know. I'll go a little slow. We talk about B2B, think about B2C marketing. First thing to be kept in mind is who pays. In this case, voice is low. Sorry, Renali, let me just change that. Just give us 1 second. Better now? Can you guys hear me now? Is it better? Can you hear me? Yeah, great. All right. So, who pays in B2B marketing? Who pays in B2B marketing? It is the business or the company pays for your service. So, when you have a business model, and people were, yes, you're right, sir. So, people who had visited or attended the previous workshop are familiar with what is a business model. I'm not going to go through that again. Your B2B marketing would have your business or your company paying for the services or your products. Who will be paying in B2C? You're going to say it's the company, or it's going to be the consumer as the customer. Is that right? Right. Great. Okay. Who uses, which means that who is the ultimate user of your product? Who is the ultimate user of your product? In this case, again, it will be the same, which is the business or the company is going to be the user of your product. And again, in B2C marketing, it's going to be the consumer or the customer who's going to be using your product. Now, this is what everybody has read and heard, and let's just spend 1 more minute looking at what I've written. Does this look correct? Looks correct, right? That's what everybody has been taught. Anything incorrect in this? Right. This is an Amazon moment. Is there any example or any place where this is going to change, where your business to customer is not the consumer in your business to customer, or who uses it in your business to customer, is not going to be uh, a customer? Can you think of an example here? All right, that was enough time. Let me just come back. If I have B2B marketing and you're saying it's the business of the company who pays for it, let's take the example of, repeat the question. All right. The question is this correct? Is in 100% of the cases, whatever I have written in front of you said, is that correct? Is there a single exception to this? That in B2B marketing, it will be always the business or company who pays. In B2B marketing, it is always the business or company who's the end user. So no worries. Let's go through some examples. Let's take a few products. First product, Tata Motors. Right? What is the product of Tata Motors? That's quite obvious. It's JLR. It is Tata Indica, Tata Nano, Tata Indigo, and all of the Tata cars, right? So who is the creator in that case? So the creator of Tata Motors would be the Tata Motors factory. You're right. So the producer slash manufacturer, monopoly markets could be an exception. Not exactly. You'll have to be a little more clearer, Sid. So let's go through this. So the producer or the manufacturer is Tata Motors. Okay. Who or what is the product? Let's take a simple example. Let's say Tata Indica. Okay. Who's the consumer? It is you, individual, right? My question is, right. Now my question is, if you are purchasing a Tata Indica right now, or a Tata Indigo, or whatever is your preference right now, Who do you give the money to? I don't think you give the money to Tata Motors, right? So if you have Tata Motors here, you would have a dealership here. Am I not? Isn't this accurate? Yep. Thank you, Sushant. And then there is you. So who's the end user? You might be the end user. Who's the one you're buying it from? You're buying it from the dealership. So it is B2C for the dealership. But is it B2C for Tata Motors or B2B? Not an Amazon question. I'm not pausing for this. Is it B2C or B2B? Let's try B2B. B2C. Okay. Okay. Let's put it as B2B. Let's put it as B2C. What was the question here? In B2B marketing, who's the one who's paying for your product? It's a business or company. So by that definition, this transaction becomes a B2B transaction. Next is who uses, which is who is the one who's ultimately using that product. So who's going to be using Tata Indica? It's not going to be the dealership. It's going to be you. So then by that definition, it becomes B2C. So by who pays definition, it becomes B2B. And by who uses definition, it becomes B2C. So then what is Tata Motors? Is Tata Motors a B2B or a B2C? The division, the specific division that we are talking about, 2B2C. B2B, so B, okay, a lot of, right. 2B2C. I guess that was a joke, Sushant, or else that was a typo. Tata Motors is a B2C company. When it comes to the Indica retail division. So, right, no worries, Sushant. So, when it comes to production, when it comes to design, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to operations, when it comes to quality, Tata Motors has to treat itself like a B2C company because it has to think all the time that my end consumer is a retail person who is going to be using Tata Indica for his home with a family of 3 or family of 4. He has to think when it comes to for a B2C company, it is going to think about production. Actually, it's going to think of design, then production, then marketing, quality control. In all of these aspects, Tata Motors is going to consider itself as a B2C company. In which aspect will it treat itself like a B2B? It is going to treat itself like a B2B company when it comes to sales. It will only go through sales through dealerships. There is no way that any of you can go to a Tata Indica factory and say, "Bhaiya, do Indica cars." That's never going to happen because even if you do that, Tata Motors will give you the factory will sell you the Indica, but it will sell you at a unit of 1,000 cars or something. All right. So when it comes to sales, Tata Motors works in a B2B fashion. When it comes to design, production, marketing, quality control, Tata Motors thinks like a B2C company. So when people are thinking about is a company B2B or B2C, it depends upon which part of business you're talking about. Fair enough? Great. So this was one example. Let's take a simpler example. Let's take a different example. Simpler is a relative term. The Tata Steel. Right, just before that, there was this one anecdote. If any of you are familiar with it, and you can stop me. When the Tata Motors revenues were significantly off, which means that the sales of Tata Motors was significantly lower during 2014-15. That was around the time when there was the rupee depreciation with the dollar. So for some unknown reason, the automobile market in 2014-15 and hit slump, something very similar to what it is hitting right now. And Tata Motors hit slump, and the CEO of Tata Motors went to the headquarters of Tata Motors and he parked his car. He looked around in the parking lot. Then he went straight up. He went to the boardroom where he had called all the division heads. So he had called people from all over the country who were the heads of sales for Tata Motors. So all the heads of sales for Tata Motors had found their way in the boardroom, and he had just one question: how many of you have a Tata car? How many of you sales heads have got a Tata car? And nobody raised their hand. They all had Beamers, they all had Mercedes, they had all got the best looking cars around, and they were all the heads of sales for Tata Motors. And that's where in 2014-15, when the CEO pushed them and told them this is where the thinking is wrong. That if my heads of sales are not going to think about buying a Tata car, how will they be able to sell Tata cars to other people? Problem one, what is the position of Tata in the brain of the people, which is positioning. Problem two, what is the price point in which Tata is being sold? Is it at such a fair price point that it does not seem premium at all? Things like that. Right? So that's the latest story that can come up some of the session. That was an interesting way in which the discussion was, even if you're in sales, you will still have to figure out, and you might be doing really well in your career, but you still have to be rooted to whatever product that you're working for. In this case, that is Tata Motors. Second example that we'll take about is Tata Steel. Is Tata Steel a B2B or a B2C? Great. Thank you, Sushant. No typos this time. You're absolutely right. Tata Steel mein, what is the product producer, or who's the producer, who's the manufacturer? It is Tata Steel. What is the product? It is mild steel, wrought iron, on and so forth. Who's the consumer? It will always be another manufacturing company. There is no way that you can buy Tata Steel from any retail outlet, which means that for all purposes, whether it is design, marketing, production, quality control, for all of these, and even sales, Tata Steel is going to consider itself and treat its company like a B2B. Why is there a difference between, why are we so concerned about the word? You can say, sir, that is fine that you're calling it B2C or B2B or whatever. ये तो बोलने की बात है, इसको नहीं भी बोलेंगे तो भी चलेगा. Why are we talking about B2C and B2B? Existential question. Why are we concerned about whether Tata Motors or Tata Steel or whoever is B2B or B2C? Straightforward. Let's see B2C. Let's write B2B. In B2C, let's start making a prediction, and let's see what we are talking about. Let's say this is the year 2019. We'll go 1 year back, and let's project this right up till 9 years. So let's just round it off, 10 years. Let's say that the profit margin that you have from a single product, so margin per product, is 5%. Okay? The number of users that you have for B2C, so now we are talking about B2C, the number of users that you have in the first year, let's say it's 1,000. Let's say the product price is 100 rupees. So what is the total profit? Product of the number of users into the product price into the profit margin, which is 5,000. All right. Now every year, your number of users is increasing at 10%, which is why I'm multiplying by 11, 1.1. Right. The next year becomes more and more and more. All right. So you're increasing every year at a compounded rate of 10%. Let's see where do your profits lie. Two, you have kept the same profit margin, you have kept the same product price, you just kept the same thing everywhere. All right. Now let's come to B2B. The first thing in B2B that you're going to see is that the number of users will never be 1,000. Realistically, the number of users are going to be 10. So the number of users automatically are going to be significantly less for a B2B company as compared to a B2C company. In a B2C company, whether it's you're selling shampoos, you're selling biscuits, you're selling anything which is FMCG, fast moving consumer, anything which is FMCG, fast moving consumer durables. What do I mean by that? Televisions, fridge, so on. All of those, you would have the number of users as massive. So your user base is huge. But your margins will be 5%, 6%. On the other side, you will have lesser users in B2B, significantly lesser users in B2B. Your margins would be significantly higher, sorry, 35%. Your product price will not hit this high, but your overall profit margin is going to be as a percent more. Now, here is where it gets interesting. You will never have so many products in your entire life cycle, but every year you can have an increase of 10%. So that's what you have. Number of users is 10, 11, and so on. So the number of users increasing by 10%. Your margin will also, let's keep it as the same. Let's copy this. So you're going to argue, why should I be in B2B? I'm making much less money. Because here is where it gets interesting. Number of units sold. In the above case, the intrinsic assumption is each user in 2019 has used only one product of yours. इसका मतलब है अगर 100 रुपए का कोई चीज था, कोई बिस्किट था, कुछ भी था, वो 1000 लोगों ने सिर्फ एक बार खरीदा है, इसीलिए आपका प्रॉफिट 5000 हुआ. समझ आया? Yeah. Radha has something to say. Yes, Radha, tell me. Radha, you can speak up or you can type here. If you have any issue, you can just drop us a WhatsApp, please. Thank you. So the assumption in B2C was every user is using your product only once. The assumption in B2B is that is not the case. In the first case, let's say that he is just using it once. Fix this formula once. Number of units sold is 1. What we have here is into 1. So in the first year, you have sold 1 unit to 10 of your customers or your clients. The next year, you have sold up to 30% more to the same number of people. So let's just round it off. Let's say this is 10 and this, the formula is a little cleaner. All right. So your number of users is increasing from 10 to 23, which is nominal. I'm going to say that this is doubled. Same with B2C, right? Let's say that your number of B2C is increasing by 10%. In B2B also, because of whatever you've done per year, the number of users have also increased by 10%, which is why your number of users in 10 years have grown from 10 to 23. Right, 23. Let's say that your profit margin in B2C was 5%. The profit margin in B2B is significantly higher, it is 35%. The number of units sold is where the difference lies. The understanding from here, which you have to always remember, is in B2B marketing, the goal is not to have as many clients as possible. That is not the main goal. The goal is to have more number of units sold from the same client. The goal is to have more number of units sold from the same client. It is a little different from how B2C marketing works. It's a little different from the principle behind B2C. B2C focuses on reach, B2C focuses on utility, because B2C focuses on availability and distribution. B2B focuses on relationship. The focus in B2B marketing is यहाँ पे जो 10 clients आपने convert किए हैं 2019 में 10 clients आपने यहाँ पे convert किए हैं उनसे ही आप पहले साल में अगर 10 यूनिट्स खरीदते थे पर क्लाइंट फ्रॉम नेक्स्ट ईयर आपने उनको कन्विंस किया कि सर यू विल हैव टू बाय 13 यूनिट्स फ्रॉम अस वी हैव बीन प्रोवाइडिंग यू विद गुड क्वालिटी वी हैव बीन प्रोवाइडिंग यू विद क्वालिटी in delivery and everything and pricing you will have to purchase more and it goes ahead and every year from the same client you can get more other part because you're selling to a business the number of units sold is a percentage of the growth of your client. If your client is growing, so there are 10 people. So just imagine or visualize that you have spoken to 10 clients. If your 10 clients have each grown by 30% in their company, then they would be producing more. Isn't that right? Let me write it down. Tata Steel, Tata Motors. All right. We just discussed Tata Motors is B2C, Tata Steel is B2B. All right. The first year, which is 2019, the demand in Tata Motors was for 100 units, 1,000 units. All right. After that, Tata Motors itself grew by 10%. Is that right? So the first year, when Tata Motors demanded 1,000 units of steel, Tata Motors provided 1,000 units of steel. The next year, Tata Motors has grown itself as a business, so it now requires 1,200 units of steel, which is 20% increase. Tata Steel will provide 1,200 units. The next year, Tata Motors has grown by another 20%. So that becomes equal to 1.2 into is 1440. Now Tata Steel will be providing 1,440 units of steel. How is this different from the users here? Let's break this, and this will be the end of B2B marketing because the session has gone a little longer than I wanted it to. It's just a little more, and it's a little more technical, and there's a little more science in this than what people really think. Yeah, B2B hai, B2C hai. Yeah, it sounds fair. This is what makes sense and stuff like that. No, there's a lot of science behind it. Why some companies choose to be B2B, why some companies choose to be B2C. That's something that we can discuss in the later on certification process. Let's look at this. So we've got Tata Steel, Tata Motors. Let's take another example. Let's say this is an average consumer. Let's take the example of Partho. I am a consumer here. And let's take the example of Head and Shoulders. Because haircut has been on my mind this entire goddamn month. As you can see. So in 2019, suppose I'm using 1 bottle of shampoo a month, average, or 1 bottle of shampoo a month. In 2019, I would be needing 12 bottles of shampoo. Head and Shoulders will give me 12 bottles of shampoo. If nothing goes wrong in my health or in my physique and in my life, I would in 2020 also I would need only 12 bottles of shampoo. Head and Shoulders will sell me 12 bottles of shampoo, and so on. The only way Head and Shoulders is going to grow is if it acquires Partho 2, Partho 3, Partho 4, Partho 5. The only way that a B2C company, so this is B2C, grows is if it acquires more and more users rather than having the same user purchase multiple times. There's only so many times that you will buy shampoo, only so many times that you'll buy biscuits, so many times you'll buy Maggie. There's only so many times you'll buy a fridge, a microwave. You buy a fridge, you are out of the market for 15 years. Isn't that right? You are absolutely out of, okay. So maybe that's just the middle class in me speaking. Maybe you're out of the market for 3 years, realistically. After 3 years, maybe you're one of those guys who think about, you know what, 3 saal ho gaya, I want a new fridge. Great. You are a massive exception. Most of this country does not think like you. You buy a fridge, you are out of the market for 15 years. So all the money spent by Kelvinator and everyone to get you to buy the fridge. That's all down the train once you bought it. Next year, kya? B2b is where you can buy exponentially because your partner company is growing. All right. These are some of the dimensions, or these are some of the aspects which are brought into mind every time we think about B2b marketing. B2C marketing में आपको समझ आ रहा है, it is about consumer acquisition, it is about customer, it's more about customer acquisition, it is more about brand retention and brand value. B2B is about relationships, which is focused about pricing, about quality, about delivery. It is focused about exponentially increasing the sales from the same client again and again and again. Because as the client grows, you grow with the client. And hence, over the course of 10 years, while you have started at 100, and the first year the B2C company had a profit of 5,000 versus your profit of only 2,800, in 10 years, the B2B company had a profit of 70,000 versus the B2C company of 11,000. All right, I'll just pause here for a second. If anybody has any questions, you can just raise your hand or you can speak up. I think we are absolutely fine if you unmute yourself and speak up. Does anyone have any questions? Anything? Any questions about what we have just gone through? Radha, did you have something to say? I think you had raised your hand. All right. No worries. All right. Any further questions from anyone? No. Moving on. This is not an Amazon question. A little bit of example on this, on what we were talking about. For those who have already gotten an experience in marketing, let's just not talk about them for 1 minute. People who are new to management, who are certain in this group, all those people who are certain that they want to complete their MBA or have started thinking about their MBA or are already enrolled in an MBA program. This course is specifically for them, those who are aspirants and in the first years. The reason behind that is you are going to get an overall understanding across multiple subjects of finance, marketing, operations, and HR. Fundamentals course, as you can see, is across 4 weeks. So it's going to be 2 to 3 hours every week. A 3 hour session and then a next 3 hour, next 3 hour, next 3 hour. Our first batch is actually starting tomorrow. So if anybody is interested, guess if by tomorrow 12 o'clock, one of you, the people interested here can enroll, then that'll be great. Because then you would be back in right in this month. The next batch might take a little bit of more time to start, but it's still going to be happening. How it works is just as the session happened right now, we were going to have multiple sessions with trainers and professionals like me and some of my other colleagues. It will mostly be me, probably would be likely me for this group of people. After completing the entire four-week session, you will be given 4 certificates. There will be certified finance professional, marketing, HR, and operations professional in fundamentals. You would also have the opportunity of choosing 2 live projects. So there are 2 live projects out of any of these 4 subjects that you can choose. As Sunipa had introduced that we are a management consulting firm, what that means is that we have got live clients and existing clients and past clients, which means we are constantly working with data and working with people who have problems in one of these 4 areas. It would be either in HR, finance, operations, or marketing. That's only the 4 areas where mostly a company would have a problem. Now somebody would come and say, sir, data analytics mein mere ko problem hua. So data analytics is also going to be an interpretation of one of these 4. Isn't that true? So if you've got a problem in data analytics, you're talking about customer acquisition or customer data, that finds its way in. Marketing, if it's about sales, it finds itself in sales and marketing. If it's about qualities, it finds itself in operations. If it is about recruitments and it is about employee behavior, then it finds its way in HRM and so on, right? The marketing courses for those people, certified course on marketing is for those people who have some experience in marketing and want to take it to the next level. So you're a little bit familiar with how things are already. And then we start with these. As you can see that these are some of the snapshots of what sessions are going to be held. So the B2B strategy is a much more longer session. That's just a sort of a demo version of what I just went through. Same here, you would be going into the depths here, but here your certification would be on marketing. So certified marketing professional advanced concepts. The price is a little higher, but again, it's kept at the same rate. This is in 4 weeks. And you again get opportunity of 2 live projects here. All right. Great. Um, I will quickly go through the sales pipeline in a few minutes, and then we would come to the finance bit of the webinar today. What you have in front of you is what a lot of people would have seen in a lot of movies, things like Wolf of Wall Street and uh, what are the other sales ones? Schindler's List and so on. Now, Schindler's List people would argue, but that's a separate argument. So there are a lot of sales-based movies which are about how do you make sales and sales and sales, The Big Short and other things. Um, all of sales in this world follows this pipeline. It does not matter what you are selling. It does not matter who you are selling to. Whatever your product is, wherever you are, you're in Nigeria, Antarctica, you're in Spain, you are in India, Mumbai, Nanded, Kolkata, যেখানেই আছো তুমি, wherever you are, whatever type of product you have, this is always going to be your sales pipeline. The sales pipeline is a visual tracking mechanism of projecting what sales you will make for that period. It is a visual tracking mechanism to project what numbers you would have for that period. Visual tracking mechanism used for projections. All right. So for forecasting, for projections, for planning, for a particular time period. So if there are maths enthusiasts here, if there is no time period, if I remove the time period, in the sales pipeline is parallel because you will have infinite time to talk to everyone, and therefore you will convert everyone. It's as they say कि अगर मेरे पास इतना time होता तो मैं कर ही लेता. So it's like that. So you can only define a sales pipeline if you've got a certain fixed time period in your brain, which is 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and so on. Second bit. Yeah. Second bit. Your sales pipeline has to have a specific product and a specific target market. The more generic you go, the more wider you go, the less useful your sales pipeline is going to be. For example, if your product is selling of biscuits and your target market is everyone from whoever can eat, so that's the age of 6 above, people don't choke till 95 if you've got teeth. 65, let's not be ambitious. So from everyone between 5 to 65 can eat a biscuit. So then your sales pipeline becomes massive because your category is biscuits. All right. Now, if I start making it more specific, let's say a more specific type, the Oreos. Not everybody would be preferring Oreos across the demographic. There would be specific people preferring Oreos. Not everybody would be wanting to eat it. So not all age groups will eat it. All right. So in your sales pipeline, if you think about just the sales part and not the marketing and the production part, your Oreos would have a different type of market where not everybody who you are going to pitch an Oreo is going to consume it. And let's take a little more complex example. Let's talk about DMart or Big Bazaar and so on. We've all gone to a DMart or a Big Bazaar. Let's say there's a new coffee. Let's call it Ghosh Off after my name. My name is Ghosh. It's a new coffee called Ghosh Off, which is very similar to David Off, but Ghosh Off is a little better. So this new coffee, Ghosh Off, is going to be proposed to new people. So people are coming and buying. It's very expensive. It's premium. It's like 1,500 bucks for 250 grams and so on, right? So what do? So you go to that place and then you start offering it for free. You start giving it. You start handing it out. Now everybody you hand it out for free, they all come here, but not all of them are going to buy it. All right. So now we have gone from a biscuit example to a coffee example. Now let's get into a little more technical example because we are all grown up here. Let's talk about an IT product. Let's talk about a, an ERP product. An ERP product which is focused on managing the supply chain of a company. An ERP product which is focused on managing the supply chain of a company. Anybody has any questions, by the way? You can just pause me at any time. Right. Um, if you speak to 100 people who need your product, you have to remember that all 100 of them are actually in need of your product. So if you're selling an ERP software to a manufacturing company, suppose there are 10 manufacturing companies, is it possible that a company doesn't need it? No. The need is there, the requirement is there. Now there are two or three things that can happen. One is it already has a product, this is your competitor or so on. Second is it does not believe in it, it is doing it all manually, which means it's got an archaic tracking system by copies and registers and maybe digital printing and fingerprints and so on, whatever, in order to track its operations, basically. The third is it needs you, right? There's a fourth kind where they don't have any of these, they're somehow managing and they don't think that there is a need. Anyone here has experience in sales in this group would tell you that when you start speaking to those 10 of them, their first thought, when you start speaking to the 10 of them, the first thought is, we don't need this. If you speak to 100 of them, all 100 of them will tell you, we don't need this. Now it is up to you to figure out who are the ones that you have to meet. Goes to the next step. So you have a list of 100 people who are all manufacturing firms. They are all going to be qualified leads. Next case is meeting them. So when you start interacting or meeting with them, that is when you start investing a little bit more time. So the amount of effort you have saved is this part. You can see the delta, right? This delta is the effort that you have saved. Otherwise, you would be talking to so many people converting these sales. This is the meet. These are the number of people that you would be meeting. Next is this. After your first meeting or second meeting, you have figured out not all of them are going to convert. So then you want to narrow down further. People who trust you, people who find value in the product, people who genuinely need the product, which means that they don't have it in some other way. People who can pay. What is the most important thing? People who can pay. All of those are going to be focused in propose. And finally, your close is going to be a narrow circle. The golden ratio in which sales works globally is 2%. It is horrible. It is depressing. It is hurtful. If any one of you are in sales, you would absolutely agree with me. But the golden ratio is 2%. It means you talk to 100 people about a product which all of them should need. Only 2 of them would buy. And that's yet how business works. That is the golden ratio of sales. The other way to represent the same circle is how do you have people flow into the sales funnel? When we say it's a sales pipeline, this looks more like a funnel that you will have people flowing in. So you will have those 100 customers coming in. You have made them aware. You've sent your flyers, brochures, advertisements, and so on. Right now, they're aware of a company which is selling here. Next is who do you interact with? Next is who has interest. And finally, who will take action? All right. Great. So this was about sales pipeline. Anything else that anybody has before I get into activity-based costing? It's going to be a slightly longer session. If you guys would allow me 10 more minutes to extend, and it's 8:20 right now. If we extend till 8:40, then we should be able to finish with activity-based costing as well. But before that, does anyone have any questions for me? How can we change the golden ratio? Right. So Shan, it's fair enough. It's a good question. The only way to convert the ratio, change the ratio, is to get into B2b, which means that from the same person, you're getting more and more and more. So after your sale, there is again another thing called retention. Okay. So once I have, so suppose let's talk about shampoos. I have spent a lot of money and in which I've convinced finally 2 out of 100 people to buy my shampoo, Head and Shoulders. The next time he should buy shampoo on his own. So I should not have to spend money on advertisement to get that one single individual to buy my shampoo. B2B. Once I have converted someone, I would consider him as a part of my sales pipeline, which is why you're going to find a lot of these massive B2B companies like Tata Steel and all. They have memorandums or MOUs or agreements for sale of steel, which are more than 70 years old because the company itself is about 120 years old. So they have a 70-year-old contract with some of these dealers and manufacturers and others, which means that their sale is going to be starting at this level, which means that a big part of their funnel is already fixed. So realistically, Tata Steel will not have to start from day zero to start converting these people. He will call these people as converts. So they would be fitting into the sales pipeline because they would still have to be made aware of the product. They would have to be interacted with. They would have to be shown interest, and then they would still have to convert, make the sale, renewal for the next year. But the conversion ratio is going to be better. All right. Anything else? Does anybody else have any question? Okay. Moving on then. Right, Sushant. So, like I just mentioned, with the big brands also, um, it's based upon how much existing pipeline they have, which means that there were people who they had spoken to in the previous year. So there would have been people they would have spoken in the previous year. So they would have connected with 400 people, 400 clients in the last year, of which 200 clients said, "Sir, इस साल नहीं हो पाएगा, sir, अगले साल करेंगे, कल करेंगे, अगले महीने करेंगे, अगले साल करेंगे." And some of them were genuine, like I have already bought it from one place, but I don't mind looking at the product. Okay. Next year, this would go up. So next year they would already have those in renewals. So the bigger the brands, the more the renewals they would have. 2% is the new business sales pipeline that is considered. And yes, that is sort of the same across all kinds of things. So if I talk about new business, if today Coca-Cola starts selling Coca-Cola to a new company, sorry, a new country altogether, it will also start with a 2% conversion rate, and then it will go, right? Okay, we're going to be talking about activity-based costing. Now, whoever is from a commerce background here would be familiar with the concept. So I'm going to be brushing through it a little quickly. And I'll quickly come to how do you use activity-based costing to make decisions. Before we get to it, if everything is fine, if nahi, I'm certain when things will be fine in all of your careers and you would all have spectacular jobs and you'd be working in your own companies or working with massive multinationals, you're going to find that the growth rate of revenue is usually very tiny. If it's a $1 billion company, you can check out any of the $1 billion companies, ignore any of those startups. We are not getting into that argument right now. It's our Uber ka to sir 1 billion said 4 billion ho gaya itni jaldi no. Let's talk about non-startup, non-tech disruption companies for now because their business models are a little different. You're going to find that their revenue projections or the revenue growth is very tiny. It's a $1 billion company, it will be a single digit revenue growth, which means it will be 5%, 6%, 8%, 9%. Thus, these companies, when they become such giants or massive units in terms of revenues as well as costs, they find it harder and harder to derive profits. Um, the definition of profit is the difference between revenue minus costs. So a $1 billion company finds it harder and harder to derive profits from the same units that it is holding. This happened a long while back, about 120 years back, when accounting was being born by some very smart chartered accountants in KPMG, if I'm not wrong. And what they found was, if we look at the same number, or we look at the same data, but in a different view or in a different light, there would be a different interpretation of what is cost, what is revenue, and what is profit. I'm going to quickly give an example. Um, let's take the same example of, say, Tata Motors. Tata Motors will have a will have a design unit, have a production unit, will have a distribution unit, right? Will have a marketing and sales unit, will have a quality control unit. We'll have many more units. Let's not plug them. Good. Now, each of these units would have certain number of employees, right? Right? Would have certain number of resources. For example, raw material, for example, tools, for example, technology, and so on. Apologies, I'll just be extending this by 10 more minutes. If anyone has a problem, you guys can simply text us later and we would get back to you, right? Any questions after this, feel free to text us, SMS us, WhatsApp us, email us. It's all fine. But let me continue for the folks who are still hanging back. Your design will have a certain number of employees and a certain number of resources. Same would be for your production, for distribution, marketing, sales, and control, right? When you have a certain number of employees, you have a certain amount of costs. So you would have an employee cost, you would have a resource cost, you would have an IT cost, you have some other costs, right? Or let's say whatever those numbers are. Sorry. They sum up to a certain number. And that is what Tata Motors will call as its total costs. Now, if it wants to decrease its costs, Tata Motors decides, you know what, I think my employee cost is kind of high. Then how will it actually make that decision that how do I decrease my employee cost, or which employees to use, or which resources to use? Where should I decrease my IT funding from, my IT costs from, and so on? That gave birth to the concept of strategic business units. Strategic business unit is a company within a company. It is how Tata Motors would look at its business. When Tata Motors looks at its business, it can look at its business, apologies, in this way. मेरे company में design, production, distribution, marketing, sales हो रहा है. It can look at its business in this way. It can also look at its business as Indica, Indigo, Nano, Pari, like bus level. टाटा का कोई बस ट्रक, ठीक है. When it interprets its business in terms of Indica, Indigo, and so on, there would be a certain revenue associated with Tata Indica sales. There would be a certain number of employees, certain resources, certain IT cost. And there would be a certain profit from Indica alone. You see how I interpreted it? Obviously, the total cost is going to be the same as total cost for Tata Motors. Total revenue will be the same revenue as total for Tata Motors. But when you start splitting them into strategic business units, you are treating Tata Indica as a company of its own. And Tata Indica will have an onus of making profits on its own. Not just make more sales, but make more profits. Not just make more sales, but make more profits. How do you make more profits? Improving the revenues, decreasing the costs. So, टाटा इंडिका का जो हेड है, हेड ऑफ टाटा इंडिका, प्रोडक्ट मैनेजर टाटा इंडिका, CEO टाटा इंडिका, there won't be a CEO. This प्रोडक्ट मैनेजर फॉर टाटा इंडिका विल से मेरा कॉस्ट तो इतना ही है, मेरा डिजाइन बन गया था 2012 में, और सही में 2012 के बाद टाटा इंडिका में कोई डिफरेंस नहीं हुआ है कार में, डिजाइन लुक एग्जैक्टली द सेम, प्रोडक्शन भी लुक है सेम फॉर इंडिगो, सेम फॉर अदर, राइट? So why would it account for the distribute for the design costs? The head of Tata Indica would say, I don't want the design cost on my P&L. Got it? So then you start allocating the costs actually where they're being, which is new models, newer developments, newer designs. So Tata Indica would have a revenue, Tata Indica would have a certain cost, and therefore it would have a profit. And hence, when Tata Motors has to make a decision of where does it want to decrease or increase its costs, it will understand looking at this chart what entity or which avenue makes more sense. We're not getting into the details of how activity-based costing went for Tata Motors. That's for a very long conversation. That's something that we would cover in the full version anyways, because that's when you go through balance sheet analysis. All right. This is where we call it a pause. Does anyone have any questions for me? You can just raise your hand. You can ask. Anybody has any questions? No, nothing. Sushant and others, people who were sort of contributing more to the. Okay, so you were more interested in the marketing part as in the finance part. Okay. All right. Any other questions? If not, then like I just mentioned, we'll be going for the fundamentals course tomorrow. The enrollment process starts right tomorrow. So we're going to start with the first batch tomorrow, fundamentals. People who are interested, you have time till tomorrow, 12 o'clock. If you have any questions whether this certification or this course is right for you or not, feel free to reach out to us and we'll explain and we'll tell you whether or not even you should do it. So it is not a clearly it's a mandate for everyone to go for the course. We kind of see your profile and we figure out whether or not it makes sense for you to do a course right now at this time or not. We suggest this for people who do not have experience or do not have knowledge. It gives you an edge above those who are going to be applying for MBA institutes, for those who are going to be applying for jobs, and so on. Okay, Shripa, I don't think I have anything else more to add. Up to you. Over to you, Shripa. Shripa? Oh, it's just, I think she can't hear me. Hello. The live project? Yeah. Sushant, I'm right here. So, Sudeepa, you can just connect with us after I've answered this query for Sushant. So, like I said, that we are also a management consulting firm. Whatever trainings or teachings that we do for each of your courses. So, for example, if this is your certification course in marketing or in finance or so on, what we do after that is um, we will allocate you to a consultant. That consultant could be someone like me or somebody else, one of our colleagues. We have got clients working with, we are working with clients right now, and they have needs in this specific area. Those could be in research, those could be in sales, field research, ground sales, setting up a marketing strategy, setting up social media strategy, and so on. That's for marketing. So this example is for marketing. Based on our interaction, after that 1 month, we will allocate 2 projects to you, up to 2 projects in each of these subjects. So if you choose marketing, then you get 2 in those. You will be working for 2 weeks with us, and on completion of that live project, you have to complete a document and you'll have to give it to us. The live project will obviously be in Excel or in PowerPoint, so that's not something you don't have to need fancy tools, and it can be completely virtual also. There would be not much need for you to travel. So that is why folks from Kolkata, Delhi, Chennai, wherever, you do not have to travel to a certain place. We can completely work on a virtual model. Anything else? Anybody wants to talk about anything else? Swapnil, yes. Swapnali has sent her details here. Sudeepa, we might need to note this down. Is that all right?
sir. I noted that.
Great. All right. If anybody has any other questions, you can tell us. Otherwise, we would be sharing this webinar, the recorded version with you anyways. Over to you, Sunipa.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for all your time. Hope it was a engaging and enriching session for all of us, all the students over here. Everyone was they were waiting for it. Thank you, sir. So hopefully we'll meet again in the next weekend. So for just for an information, we schedule a webinar on every weekend on Saturday at this time almost most probably. So you can just join back anytime, and we'll be sharing all the webinar details every week to everyone. Thank you everyone for joining with us.
Right. So if you guys have any feedback for us, do let us know. We will reach out to you. Right. Thank you.